Cancer research and treatment in Nigeria have undergone significant development in recent years, reflecting a growing awareness of the increasing burden of cancer in the country. Strides have also been made to establish research centers and promote initiatives aimed at understanding the prevalence, causes, and patterns of cancer in the local population. These efforts have led to a better grasp of the unique challenges that Nigerians face in terms of cancer incidence and types. Now, despite these efforts, there are still obstacles to overcome, including the shortage of skilled healthcare professionals and the accessibility of advanced medical technologies. The need for affordable and widespread screening programs is crucial for early detection, as late-stage diagnosis remains a significant challenge. By fostering a multifaceted approach that combines research, prevention, early detection, and accessible treatment options, Nigeria aims to improve the overall landscape of cancer care and reduce the burden of this disease on its population. Our guest sees the silver lining in the clouds and wants everyone to know that things have been set in motion to ensure reduction in the incidence of cancer in the country. Newsnight sat down for a conversation with Professor Usman Aliyu, the Director General of the National Institute for Cancer Research and Treatment. So, Professor Aliyu, thank you for speaking with us on Newsnight. Let's start out with this one here. On the average, going by the National Cancer Control records, we have approximately 72,000 cases of cancer in Nigeria annually. But we also know that on the average, 72,000 cancer-related deaths in Nigeria annually. But annually, the occurrence or records of cancer being diagnosed is about 102,000. Why is this so?
Okay. So, thank you very much first for having me on this program. And thank you very much also for the question. So, cancer is actually one of the non-communicable diseases, that their incidence and prevalence is actually doubling, not only in Nigeria, but in the world over, majorly because of the change in lifestyle of individuals. The lifestyle we are imbibing currently favors the advent or the contraction of all these new NCDs, that is the non-communicable disease. Like the food we eat, if we should start from there. Most of the food that we eat, because of the nature of our work, contain a lot of fats in them. We are moving out away gradually from the typical or traditional foods that we normally used to eat when we were young to Western diet. And that comes with a lot of repercussions. And one of them is the cancer that we are talking about. So changing in the way we eat. Preserved food, more fatty food, less vegetable food, food with a lot of preservatives, that has consequences. It comes with a lot of consequences, of which cancer is one of them. 2, the way we move about with our daily activities. We are becoming less mobile in terms of, less physical in terms of our activities. The way we do our work is more or less more sedentary, if I should put it that way, than like walking. So that's also non-exercising our bodies regularly predisposes to contracting this non-communicable diseases, of which cancer is actually one of them. Applying a lot of cosmetics that contain a lot of heavy metals for beautification, that also comes with a hell lot of consequences. Industrialization. We are having more industries than we used to have before, and with less compliance to the restrictions on the guidelines on how these industries should operate. You know, each and every industry has a certain recommendations on the type of personal protective equipment that those working in that company or industries are expected to use. That is not being adhered to. Compliant is the issue. You can see that a lot of countries are flying hazardous gases, either in the Western countries, and of recently more even in the African subcontinents, with less concern to the governments of the nation. That alone, what they are emitting, actually is a hazard to one. If it's all these gases, the carbon monoxide most especially, that can affect the ozone layer that we have in the country. And we all know that ozone layer is a protective cover from radiation that comes from the sun. And those radiation can cause skin cancers and other things. So these are just a few.
It's a serious matter. But you see, many times, because the idea for some before now is that cancer is found, or the people that may be diagnosed with cancer, the aged, the smokers, lung or throat cancer, and very rarely children. But you just said here, yes, cancer is one of the non-communicable diseases, but the prevalence is doubling, you said, because of a change of lifestyle. Why is it that we're not aware of the consequences of these changes in lifestyle? Is it a question of ignorance?
Well, it could be, and at the same time, even if the nature of people, the personality sometimes, even if sometimes it's very difficult to adhere because you are used to certain way of life. And this thing is not, these risk factors, exposure to them takes time before one develops the cancer. It takes time. It is not an immediate effect. That, like, even the cigarette that you just mentioned, that if I take a stick of cigarette today, I'll come up with lung cancer. It's something that builds up. It's an insult to the cells of an individual. Like the smoking is to the lungs. These insults will cause an injury to the DNA of the cell. That is the nucleus of the cell. And this injury, sometimes the body tends to repair the injury. So if you repeat again and then make it a habit, then the injury is sustained. You continue to cause that. And then it will get to a certain point where the repair mechanism of the body will fail to correct the injuries inflicted through. And from there is what is called mutation. Now the cells there will mutate. And from that mutation is one of the key things that causes cancer. So it is a progressive, accumulative result of what somebody has been doing for quite a very long time. So that is why you see it takes time. And if you don't see the result of it, like maybe your friend is smoking, you know, it's very difficult to say, but my friend has been smoking for 10 years, he hasn't come with any of it. So why should I not smoke? But because that very person is not working in the hospital. So where
let's step back a bit and look at the types of cancers that are prevalent in Nigeria and indeed around. What type of cancers are there?
Okay, so generally in Nigeria, we have like breast is the commonest that we have. Breast cancer is the number one, followed by cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is the cancer of the mouth of the womb, according to the lay people or laymen in the street. The third one that we have in terms of the prevalence is prostate cancer. Then we have liver cancer, and then colon cancer. And sometimes it changes. Some will say liver, colon cancer, or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, depending on the region of the country where one is coming from or where the study is being carried out. So, you know, we have diverse data coming from different regions, the 6 regions that we have, depending on the nature of environment and the risk factors that these regions are exposed to that can predispose one to cancer. So these are the commonest type that we have.
In all of this here, does the same thing apply? Lifestyle change, is that what causes most of this? Where does the anemia, as the sickle cell, where does that come into all of this?
Okay, so
that's the cancer of the blood, right?
No, sickle cell is not cancer. It's actually a benign condition, but that has to do with the morphology of the red blood cells. It's an disease of inheritance, you know. It's a genetic abnormality whereby an individual that inherited that trait will have an abnormal red blood cells that is produced into the body that is just sickle in shape. Sickled.
Yeah, okay.
That is from the sickle.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is just it. But what we have, the cancers of the blood that we normally have are what we call the leukemias, the myelomas, the leukemias, either acute or chronic leukemia or myelomas. These are the blood cancers that we.
And those ones are also caused by lifestyle change.
Yes. Yes.
So let's look at this matter of lifestyle changes again. If one is an adult, you could say lifestyle changes. But for children, where does the lifestyle change come in there? How does that cause cancer in children?
So actually what causes cancers in children somewhat differ from the things that causes cancer in the adult. Like in the children, most of the causative agents or the risk factors or things that are implicated as what cause the etiologic causes of cancer in children are mainly genetics. Are mainly genetic. Inheritance of an abnormal genes or an insult that can be passed, you know, all this, like the explanation I've just finished. If you have an abnormal gene, you inherited a certain abnormality within the gene. The gene usually is like an organ or just like a chemical that store information about how a certain behavior or a part of your body should be. So if you and it is this pigments that continue to give directive to your body to produce what at a certain number and at what time, quantity, and nature. So if you have a defective mutation, and that mutation is inherited by the new baby, the newborn, so it can quickly generate into the cancers that way. So it's purely inheritance in most of the cases.
Then that's the children.
Yes, genetic inheritance.
Okay, but for the adults, it's mostly...
Yeah, the adult is mostly behavioral changes.
In Nigeria, one could then say that the major causes of cancer spread across is either lifestyle changes or genetic, especially for the children.
Yes.
But once in a while, you find a lifestyle change matter amongst the children as well.
Very well.
Okay, but let's come down to your institute, the National Institute for Cancer Research and Treatment. You're just barely a year old, barely. But the law that set up this institute was signed, as you said, in 2017. So what has been going on since then?
Well, you know, it's quite actually difficult to say because of the bureaucracy, you know, in government. You know, sometimes you do things, but it's difficult to say. It was signed in 2017, but the establishment of the institute came up in January. So, and some things are political. And you know, each government has its own priority because of the limited resources that it has. And so it's very difficult to clearly say this is the reason. But I think we should, what we should be doing now is to be grateful to the government now for the establishment of that institute and for empowering the institute with an enabling act to take leadership in anything that has to do with cancer. That is in the area of cancer prevention, cancer research, cancer treatment, and in general, that is in totality, cancer control. So it's, I think we have to applaud the government for actually having that attention, for giving that attention to the institute, and to commend His Excellency Ahmed Bola Tinubu in line with his renewed hope agenda in the health sector for actually giving what is required and to the institute and ensuring that it has been established and giving all the supports that are needed for the institute to discharge its prescribed duties.
So you're talking about prevention, research and treatment. This is like the mandate of the institute. What has it been like so far? I mean, in about a year, can we say you've been able to prevent any occurrence of cancer? Or what has your research, or let's start from there. What has your research shown so far? I just read out what it was like between 2018 and 2022. But your law was 2017. And then beyond that, it was just gathering of data and statistics. And we have 72,000 deaths related to cancer, 102,000 cases annually. And now you say that those numbers have doubled by doubling prevalence. That's what you're implying.
Yeah. So it's what was actually presented of 102 to 104 new cases annually in Nigeria, and like 72 to 74,000 deaths annually from cancer was just a projection. It was just a projection, mere estimation from the previous studies or data that we already have. You see, in 2020, Globalcan reported that around 18 million plus new cancer cases were reported in that area. And more than half
in Nigeria?
In the world. Okay. And more than half of that died of the disease. Almost 10 million. deaths were recorded in that 2020. And then there was another projection by an oncologist, a scientist, that this pattern of increase, if nothing is done, by the next 2 decades, is going to increase by 75%, or is going to double. This projection is going to double. And then what is very scary is that 75% of his projection, the new cancers that are going to come in the next 2 decades, 75% of this are going to come from the low and middle income countries, of which Nigeria is one of them. So it's like the whole world is facing a war that is coming.
From the picture you painted, your institute has a huge task ahead of it. But it doesn't look like you're ready for this. Or are you?
Yeah, just mentioned.
You're ready for this. But right now in Nigeria, you have just one screening center, right?
No.
Relative, how many screening centers do we have in Nigeria?
So virtually, if you look at the major tertiary health institutions that we have in the country, you can walk into any of these hospitals. Maybe if it is that of cervical cancer, you can go to the gynecology department of our tertiary hospitals. We have gyne-oncology units, where all you need to tell them that you want to embark on this screening program, and you can be taken. And that can be done for you. Likewise, for the breast cancers, you can go to surgical oncology, any oncology department, tell them that this is what we have. They are going to do it for you. So, but now what the institute is planning, we want to change the style or the way we do our things. We want to see how we can establish a preventive clinics separate from, other key co-clinical activities that it's been doing. So this institute has also the mandate to oversee and ensure what oncology centers in the country are giving
So
cancer
again,
patients.
1 second. So beyond just the research and treatment,
Yes.
you also are monitoring the oncology centers.
Excellent.
Both private and government
Yes.
owned.
Yes.
In terms of this monitoring, for instance, I know we're talking about treatment here, and we'll still get there. How has the treatment part of this whole thing been? But how many oncology centers do we have them in every hospital,
Region.
teaching hospital at least across the country?
Well, not in all the teaching
Tertiary
or
hospitals?
tertiary hospitals in the state, but in virtually all of the regions of the country, the 6 geopolitical zones that we have in the country. Like if you talk the Northwest, we have Zaria and we have Sokoto. All these 2 teaching hospitals, we have standard oncology centers there.
So when you say you're monitoring what they do at the oncology centers, what are you monitoring?
So the monitoring is actually when we monitor the activities that are going on in each and every oncology center. Currently, we have started what we call mapping. It's a kind of a study that we are conducting, which we didn't have before. Is to map all the cancer centers that we have in the country, and also the resources that they have, cutting across the human resource, the type of equipment they have in the country, the functional, the non-functional, the outdated, and the services they offer, even the level of the training of the personnel that we have there. The intention of this is, if you have this data, it will guide you on what to do next. It will give you a direction of what is the current status of the country in terms of oncology service delivery. And then it will give you room to plan for the future. So that currently we are carrying out that mapping.
You were talking about, you mentioned about your regulatory responsibilities. You also talked about the oncology department spread in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. But I also do remember that I asked you a question about what you have discovered in terms of research. You talked about your gathering data. You talked about, and this data has been gathered from the oncology centers. Before we get to the point of what you've discovered in terms of treatment, medicines or treatment, modes of treatment so far in Nigeria, let's step back a bit and look at that matter of regulatory duties that you have. There is that concern about how many people are diagnosed of cancer. Some are told they have cancer only to find out that it's just a mere tumor. Some are told they have cancer only to find out that maybe it's malaria or something, that acute malaria, and they're told you have cancer. The question of diagnosis, what is the Institute going to do about that?
Okay. So generally, this got across or brought about the issue of quality assurance. And if you look at the organogram of the Institute, one of the directorate that we have is the Directorate of Monitoring and Surveillance. Monitoring and surveillance. So what we intend to do is, we have experts in the fields. We set out or design a model or a certain program whereby each and every oncology departments or oncology centers that we have in the country is going to be periodically monitored. Our teaching hospital, we frequently or periodically monitor their equipment, what they have. We appraise even the human resource that they have. What are their training level? What are their training level? Because all these errors that we are talking about, they cut across one. They could either be because of the equipment that we have. Either they are old, or they are probably the reagent that we are using has expired, or the training of the personnel is actually not up to where we want it to be able to detect or to take certain decisions regarding the diagnosis of cancer or treatment. And for long, this hasn't been put anywhere in place. It is now with the establishment of this institute that we are setting this, because we want to see results. And we want to establish what is actually happening in all these centers that we have. So this need assessment, we think, is very important, which we have already started.
You know, there's a sense of urgency that needs to come in here, because it's believed that at least 70% of the diagnoses of cancer are misdiagnosed in Nigeria. 70% of the diagnoses are misdiagnosed cases. So there's a sense of urgency that needs to creep in here. If indeed, as you told us, the prevalence rate is doubling. So it also points to the fact sometimes someone's told you have cancer, and because of that psychological effect, the next thing we're seeing that the person is dying or dead without knowing that it wasn't necessarily a cancer. So is it something that the Institute can speed up?
Well, it is, but you know, sometimes you don't rush into the things we have. There was no this institute maybe like 2 years back, and probably people or centers are doing what they like. Now we have the institute, so at least the country is moving in the forward direction. Even though we are not where we want us to be, or we are not there yet, but we have taken an action today to get to where we want tomorrow, to better what is already. So I think it's still a good thing. I think these errors that I've just mentioned, even in the Western world, they do happen, they do occur, but not at the rate at which they are happening in this country. The country is overburdened with so many other things. We are been battling with infectious diseases in our hospitals. We are not done with them, of which the Western world, they have gone by. Hardly infectious diseases are not their problem, all this, and not to talk of the tropical diseases, neglected tropical diseases. What they have there more are the NCDs. Those are their problems. So in the low middle income countries and African subcontinent, we are not done with the infectious diseases, and yet we are now battling again with. So you can see limited resources that we have is being competed for by these two. Yeah.
And seeing that we used to have natural remedies, you said, but our lifestyle has also taken us out of that space for natural remedies. So let's go again, return back to the question of research and what you've been able to find out in terms of treatment. So what have you been able to find? So
treatment usually for cancer cut across three major areas, three modalities. We have the surgery, we have the chemotherapy, the radiotherapy. And some will add targeted therapy, but I always like that to come under chemotherapy. There are a series of researches that have been carried out in this area of cancer treatment in the country. We have major ones that we are conducting. Currently, there is this research that we are conducting. It is, the grant is coming from the National Cancer Institute of America, of which this institute was established. We have almost virtually, yes, similar role. This my institute is expected to operate as that of America, the National Cancer Institute. So this grant that we are currently working on is sponsored by the NCI, and we're doing the research in collaboration, conjunction with the IHB and Institute of Human Virology and some other experts within the country. It's called Screen and Treat Some Lesions for the Anal Cancer. So that is just one out of a lot of researches that we are doing. We are currently carrying out one in breast cancer, that is a BRCA, is a major studies. We have IKEA. It's a mega prostate cancer research that we are conducting with Mayo Clinic. If you know Professor Odedina, she's the PI of that, and the country PI is myself and Prof of Covenant University. There are a lot of researches that are currently ongoing in the country, in the area of research, and the aim and objectives of all these researches is to be able to come up with a more better way of preventing, diagnosing, and treating cancers in Nigeria, in Africa, and in the world at large. Currently, we are putting our energy more in the area of clinical trials. The clinical trials is a kind of research whereby new drugs that are going to be introduced into the society, or new interventions, must be tested among or within the human population, bearing in mind the same race, age, and other genetic differences or peculiarities of individuals. Most of the clinical trials that have been carried out on drugs, they were tested purely on Caucasians. And if they work with them, they just transfer the drugs.
So none was tested on Africans?
None.
But have
on clinical trials.
Have some of these treatments worked for Africans?
It's very difficult to say. Some work. Some of the Africans, some of our patients even die because of the toxicity of this medication. So, but this institute, I actually was out of the country in America, Global Oncology Summit, and we have presented this issue that the representation of the African or blacks in clinical trials in oncology medicine is less than 5%. It's less than 5%. Some will say it's even less than 2% from the data that we have.
But if that's for the clinical trials, and you said that's what the area you're like going into right now. So that is it so that you begin to try out those medicines on Nigerians?
On black Africans.
On black Africans,
yes.
Not necessarily Nigerians.
Not necessarily Nigerians.
So that means the clinical trials will not be done here.
It will not be done here. It will be done on blacks, but it will be good.
But what about the issue of the effect of the climate on the individuals? Because we do understand that sometimes some people get ill. Yeah. They go for surgery. They get the treatment. But by the time they come back, because of the climatic effect.
Change, yeah.
So is that also being considered?
Yes. You see, because our body composition, our body is quite different from the genetic composition of an African is different from that of the Caucasian. So if you are given a medication or you carry out a study on the efficacy of a certain drug on the white and make a general assumption that we are all human beings, since it works on the white, it will definitely work. You are making a hell lot of mistake. So that is why we are saying that any new drug that is going to be introduced, that we know that that drug is going to be sent to our people here to treat them, maybe probably for certain cancers. It has to be first tested on the black. And let us see the efficacy and the side effect that it produces. If it produces a favorable outcome, then we can say, we are okay. Then it can be sent down and it can be used to our patients.
All right. That matter of misdiagnosis, we do know that it's believed that Professor Dora Quinley died out of misdiagnosis of the cancer situation, shortly. So hopefully we'll see a better diagnosis across our country. But what's the timeline you're giving this institute, your institute, to see diagnosis, better diagnosis, and possible treatment of cancer in Nigeria?
Okay. So I think, thank you very much for that question. Within the span of the establishment of the institute, barely just there about a year ago, or let's say precisely 10 months now, we have launched 3 very important policy documents on cancer for the country. The first one is the 5-year cancer control plan that we have launched. The 5-year cancer control plan for the country gives direction on how we carry out our cancer prevention, cancer treatment, and cancer control in the country. And it brings out all the strategies that we are going to take to combat the scourge of cancer in the country. And we have timeline for each and every activity that we have taken. So we're starting from the last part of the 2023, 2024, we have activities that we are going to do. And we have timeline. And then also the measurement tools to see where we are, where we need to improve. I'll give you that copy. So that is one, the 5-year cancer control. For the first time, the Institute has written and developed, we've launched cancer research agenda for the country. It was launched by the Minister of Health during the International Cancer Week. A very beautiful document. It gives direction on which area of cancer research is the country expected to focus on? And what do we need to do during the research?
So why would the country be cocooned to an area of cancer research? Is it because of the collaborations you have, or you're hoping to get that, focus on that, and then share with the others? And what's the guarantee that the information they might be giving you, born of their research, is going to benefit you here, who's dealing with Africans and then dealing mostly with Caucasians?
So that is why we have the cancer research agenda for Nigeria. We are the oncologists, we are the clinicians. We've been trained in the country. We treat patients in the country. We know our problems. So we are fed up with maybe the foreign people coming out with a research. Grants, they come with money and their research agenda. We want you to conduct this research on your people. This is the money for it. And then most of our scientists will jump, this is money, not knowing that they are not solving the solution of African solution, but rather they are solving the solution of the Western world. That is their interest. So they follow that. So when we see that, we said, no, this has to change. With this institute, and with the introduction of the renewed hope agenda of Mr. President Bola Tinubu, we have to design something that is meant for Nigeria, something that can solve the problem of cancer patients in Nigeria. And that is why we sat down and then designed a cancer research agenda for the country. And it was launched just a month ago by the Minister, State Minister of Health and Social Welfare, Dr. Tunji Alausa. And that is our guiding principle. So any person that is coming into the country, we have to show him this is our priorities in the area of cancer, because these are our problems. Then you have to align.
Some time back, there was this vaccine that was the HPV vaccine. And there was that matter of, oh no, I want my children to no, I don't want my children to take it. Tell us about the HPV and why it was so controversial in Nigeria. Many parents would not let their children take it. Some felt you were introducing their children to something that they may never. In fact, you're opening their system up to something that, if you leave them alone, their body can actually fight that virus itself.
People have to understand that what is HPV? HPV stands for human papillomavirus. Of all the cancers that we have in the world, cervical cancer is one out of many that we exactly know the cause. There are very few cancers that we know what is exactly causing them.
So in the case, we know the cause of this.
We know the cause is a virus. And that virus is human papillomavirus.
And it's transmitted sexually?
Sexually. It is transmitted sexually.
So then why are we having children take the HPV vaccine when they are not sexually active?
Okay. So why we want the children, like the age of 9 to 14, to take this disease? It is a vaccine. And what vaccine does into the body is not directly treat. When the vaccine is given to you, it will prepare or stimulate your body defense system to produce soldiers, the defense mechanism for that specific disease. You know, the human papillomavirus is almost that the vaccine is like an inactive form of that HPV that is introduced. And the body will sense it as if it is the original disease that is now coming in. And the body will produce an excellent defense system in the body it will recognize that and store it in the memory of the defense mechanism of the body before exposure. So that when you are growing up, because it is a chronic ailment, it takes time before it develops the cervical cancer. But if you already have this immunity in you, when you are exposed in subsequent years, when now that baby that took it, that girl becomes sexually active subsequently, she has matured, she's sexually active. Anytime that human papillomavirus, she gets contracted with it, she has already developed enough body defense to fight it. And then it will automatically be dealt with by the vaccines that is already taken. So the body has already developed enough defense system if she is vaccinated to fight the future infections that are going to come. So it's like preparing her for the future, because there is no way that she will not be exposed.
So why limit it to that age bracket, 9 to 14?
So you know, a cost is expensive, and because it is expensive, and this is what the country can lay our hands on, the number of vials, I think there are about 7 to 8 million vials that we have gotten. So we generally look at who will benefit more from it. So we said, let's use it in this group of people that are not already exposed, that can maximally have the benefit or the effect, that can be maximally protected from contracted disease. They are not yet exposed.
Professor Aliyu, thank you so much again. We won't let you go until you tell us what the plans are for the future, what you've achieved so far.
The Institute is actually working closely with our mother ministry to actually currently the government is working on procuring like 7 radiotherapy machines for the country. And this will add to the already existing machines that we have for the treatment of cancer patients in the country. The establishment of this institute designed a preventive cancer screening and awareness programs for the country that is going to be run virtually almost every other month. We intend to cover virtually all the 6 geopolitical zones in the area of cancer prevention. The institute is planning to upgrade and resuscitate the cancer registries that we have, because you have to have an effective cancer registries that feed you with up-to-date information on the number of cancers that you have in the country. That will give you the room to plan and to do that. We are currently working to with some international organizations who are willing to come up and train our human oncology workforce on various facets, cutting across surgical oncology, chemotherapy, radiation and clinical oncology, and diagnosis. We have already started. Cancer registry, make it more robust and more effective, and so on and so forth.
So thank you very much, Professor Aliyu.
So
thank you for speaking with us. We wish you well as you continue the research and treatment of cancer.
Thank you very much for having me.
That's the end of the show today. Thank you for being a part of the conversation. We will love to hear from you. Please use the platforms now showing on your screen. You can also catch up with this particular conversation and the past ones via our website. That's channelcv.com/podcast. Till we come your way again, it's goodbye.